The human girl slumped against his shoulder in the silence of the ancient library, her breathing evening into sleep, and Faelan Sorvain felt something inside his centuries-old chest crack open like ice under spring sunlight. He had come to the royal archives beneath Ashenmore Castle to escape the tedium of court politics, not to find a mortal woman rifling through documents she absolutely should not have been able to access. The protective wards on this wing were powerful enough to repel lesser vampires, let alone a human with no magical training. Yet here she was, Marina Hayes, a graduate student who had somehow talked her way past 3 levels of security with nothing but determination and a falsified research permit. He should have called the guards immediately. Protocol demanded it. Humans discovered in the restricted sections faced memory wipes at minimum, imprisonment at worst. But when he had materialized behind her, ready to drag her from the premises himself, she had whirled around with fire in her dark eyes and announced that she knew exactly who he was and that she needed his help. The audacity had startled him into listening. That had been 4 hours ago. Now, the moonlight filtered through the vaulted windows, casting silver patterns across the marble floor, and Marina Hayes had fallen asleep against the arm of the vampire king himself. Her head rested in the crook of his elbow, her brown hair spilling across his black velvet sleeve, her fingers still loosely holding a leather-bound journal she had been translating from Old Valethian. Faelan sat perfectly still, aware that the slightest movement might wake her. His pale fingers hovered over the page he had been reading, but his crimson eyes kept drifting to the woman beside him. She smelled of coffee and old books and something floral, jasmine perhaps, completely at odds with the ancient dust and parchment surrounding them. Her heartbeat was steady and strong, a rhythmic drum that sang of life and warmth. He could hear the guards approaching before they reached the doorway. Their armor clinked softly, their own heartbeats elevated with nerves. Everyone in the castle knew the king valued his solitude, especially in the archives. Interruptions were not tolerated. The massive oak door opened with barely a whisper. 2 of his royal guard entered, their white hair gleaming in the moonlight, their faces carefully neutral. Faelan recognized Castellan and Revak, both veterans who had served him for over a century. They froze when they saw the scene before them. Their king, Lord Faelan Sorvain, ruler of the Northern Territories and High Sovereign of the Eternal Court, sat at a reading table with a human woman asleep against his arm. It was unprecedented. It was shocking. It violated at least 6 different protocols about human contact within the inner sanctum. Castellan opened his mouth, undoubtedly to alert Faelan to the breach in security. Before he could speak, Faelan raised one finger to his lips in the universal gesture for silence. Then, with movements so fluid and gentle they seemed almost tender, he shifted his position. He slid his arm more fully around Marina's shoulders, adjusted her weight so she rested more comfortably against his chest rather than at an awkward angle, and draped his cloak over her sleeping form. The guards stood absolutely motionless, shock evident in their widened eyes. In all their years of service, they had never seen their king display such care for anyone, let alone a human. Faelan was known for his absolute control, his strategic mind, his ability to make difficult decisions without sentiment. He had executed traitors without flinching, negotiated peace treaties that saved thousands of lives, and ruled his people with iron discipline tempered by wisdom. He did not cuddle sleeping mortals in libraries. Faelan met their stunned gazes with a look that promised severe consequences if they spoke a single word. Then he made a small gesture with his free hand, a command they understood instantly. Leave. Now. Tell no one. Castellan and Revak exchanged glances, bowed deeply, and retreated from the library with the silence of shadows. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Alone again, Faelan looked down at the woman sleeping against him. This was madness. He had lived for over 600 years without forming attachments to humans beyond the necessary political relationships. They were fragile, temporary creatures who flickered through existence like candle flames. Getting close to them was an exercise in inevitable grief. Yet Marina Hayes had walked into his library, looked him in the eye, and asked for help finding the truth about her sister's disappearance. She believed vampires were involved, and she was right. What she did not know was that her sister had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple missing persons case. Emily Hayes had uncovered evidence of a conspiracy within the vampire court itself, a plot that threatened to destabilize the careful balance between the human world and the vampire realm. Faelan had been investigating the same conspiracy for months. The appearance of Emily's sister was either catastrophic timing or fate's twisted sense of humor. Marina stirred slightly, her hand curling against his chest. Even in sleep, she held on to that journal, the one containing her sister's notes about suspicious deaths in the university district. Faelan had confirmed what Marina suspected. The deaths were not natural. They bore the marks of illegal blood harvesting, a practice outlawed by vampire law for centuries, but apparently experiencing a resurgence in certain underground circles. The implications were staggering. If rogue vampires were hunting humans in territories under his protection, it meant either a massive failure of his security apparatus or, more likely, cooperation from someone within his own government. The thought made his jaw tighten with barely suppressed rage. Marina made a small sound, something between a sigh and a murmur. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and hazy with sleep. For a moment, she simply blinked up at him, her face inches from his. Then awareness flooded back, and she jerked upright, nearly dropping the journal. "I fell asleep," she said, stating the obvious. Her cheeks flushed pink, a rush of blood beneath her skin that Faelan could hear and smell with perfect clarity. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "You were exhausted," Faelan said, his voice low and measured. "You've been awake for nearly 36 hours by my estimation. Your body simply reached its limit." Marina pushed her hair back from her face, looking disoriented and embarrassed. Was I leaning on you?" "For approximately 15 minutes, Faelan confirmed. He did not mention how he had adjusted her position or covered her with his cloak. "The guards came to check on me. I sent them away." Her eyes widened. "They saw me here? Are they going to report this? Am I going to be arrested?" "No one will arrest you while you are under my protection," Faelan said with absolute certainty. "I have declared you a consultant on a matter of royal importance. That grants you legal access to these archives and immunity from standard security protocols." Marina stared at him. "You can just do that?" "I am the king," Faelan said simply. "Yes, I can just do that." She laughed, a short, breathless sound. "Right, the king. I keep forgetting that part because you're sitting here reading old documents with me like a research partner, not like royalty." "Royalty is a function, not an identity," Faelan said. "And at present, the function I am performing is investigating a threat to my people and yours. Your sister discovered something important. Miss Hayes, these journals contain evidence of a trafficking network that spans multiple cities." The levity drained from Marina's expression. "You think Emily found out about it, and they took her to keep her quiet?" "I think your sister is likely still alive," Faelan said, choosing his words carefully. "If the conspirators had simply wanted her dead, they would have killed her and made it look like an accident. The fact that she vanished suggests they either want information from her or plan to use her as leverage." "Leverage against what?" "Against you, potentially. Or against anyone who comes looking for her." Faelan turned back to the documents spread across the table. "These records show a pattern. Young people, usually students or recent graduates, disappearing from areas near old access points to the underground city. Your sister was investigating these disappearances. She got too close." Marina's hands clenched into fists. "Then we need to find these access points. We need to go down there and search for her." "We need to be strategic," Faelan corrected. "Rushing into hostile territory without reconnaissance is suicidal. The underground passages beneath this city are vast and ancient. Some date back 1,000 years or more. They are also currently controlled by elements I cannot fully trust." "But you're the king. Don't you control everything?" Faelan's expression turned grim. "In theory. In practice, power is distributed among the great houses, the military, and various administrative bodies. I have been consolidating my authority since taking the throne 2 centuries ago, but there are still factions that resent my reforms. Some of them would love nothing more than to see me weakened or removed." "And you think this trafficking network is connected to those factions?" I know it is." Phelan pulled out a different document, this one a financial ledger written in code he had already cracked. These transactions correlate with movements of certain noble houses, money flowing in directions that make no sense unless you assume illegal activity. The illegal blood trade is incredibly lucrative, Miss Hayes. There are vampires who would risk everything for that kind of profit. Marina studied the ledger, her academic training evident in the way she parsed the information. If you expose this, you expose them, but they'll fight back. Yes, which is why I've been gathering evidence slowly and carefully. I need an airtight case before I move against the perpetrators. Faelan met her eyes. Your sister's notes provide corroboration from the human side. If I can prove that vampires and humans are both being harmed by this conspiracy, I can unite opposition against it. You're talking about politics and strategy, Marina said, her voice tight with frustration. My sister is down there somewhere, scared and alone, and you want to build a court case. I want to ensure that when we extract her, she is somewhere safe to return to, Faelan said sharply. If I act rashly and the conspiracy goes deeper than I know, we could all end up dead or worse. Your sister included. Marina looked away, her jaw working. He could see the conflict in her, the desperate need to act warring with the logic of his argument. Finally, she took a shaky breath. How long? How long what? How long until you have enough evidence to move against them? Faelan considered. 3 days, perhaps 4. There's a gathering of the noble houses scheduled for the end of the week. If I can present the evidence then, before the assembled court, they will not be able to suppress it or retaliate without revealing their guilt. And if something happens to Emily in those 3 days? I will assign my most trusted guards to begin covert reconnaissance of the underground, Faelan said. They will search for signs of where prisoners might be held. If we locate your sister before the gathering, we will extract her immediately. But we must be cautious. Marina looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face. Why are you helping me? Really? You could have had me thrown out or mind-wiped or whatever it is you do to humans who stumble into your world. Instead, you're sitting here making me a consultant and planning rescue operations. Why? It was a fair question. Faelan had been asking himself the same thing since the moment he decided not to turn her over to security. The logical answer was that she provided valuable intelligence and a unique perspective on the conspiracy. The honest answer was more complicated, because what is happening to your sister and others like her is an abomination, Faelan said finally. Because my people have laws against this kind of predation precisely because we are not monsters, because I swore an oath when I took the throne to protect both vampires and the humans who share these territories with us. And because, he paused, unusual hesitation in his voice. Because you walked into my library and demanded justice with a kind of courage I have not seen in decades. That deserves support, not suppression. Marina's expression softened slightly. Thank you for being honest. Honesty is inefficient but occasionally necessary, Faelan said dryly. He stood moving with the preternatural grace of his kind. It is nearly dawn. You should return to your accommodations and rest properly, in a bed, not slumped against vampire royalty and archives. A hint of a smile touched Marina's lips. Where exactly are my accommodations? I came here planning to break into restricted areas and then wing it. I don't actually have anywhere to stay. Faelan resisted the urge to pinch the bridge of his nose, a gesture he had picked up from exasperated courtiers over the years. You broke into the royal archives without even arranging a hotel room? I spent my money on travel and bribes to get past your security, Marina said defensively. I was operating on limited resources in maximum desperation. I see. Faelan walked to the library door and opened it. As expected, Castellan and Revak were still stationed outside, standing at attention. They looked at him with barely concealed curiosity. Castellan, please escort Miss Hayes to the guest wing, provide her with appropriate accommodations, and ensure she has access to meals and amenities. Castellan's eyebrows rose fractionally. The guest wing, my lord, not the holding cells? Did I stutter, Castellan? No, my lord, guest wing, immediately. Castellan bowed and gestured for Marina to follow him. Marina gathered her notes in the journal, tucking them into her worn leather bag. As she passed Faelan, she paused. "Will I see you tomorrow, to continue the research?" "Yes," Faelan said. "Return to the library after sunset. We have much work to do." She nodded and followed Castellan down the corridor. Faelan watched her go, aware of Revok's scrutiny. When Marina and Castellan rounded the corner and disappeared from sight, Revok finally spoke. "My lord, if I may speak freely." "You may." "The human woman. She represents a significant security risk. Even with your protection, there are those in court who will see her presence as a weakness to exploit." "Let them try," Faelan said coldly. "Miss Hayes is under my direct protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Make sure that message spreads quickly through all appropriate channels." Revok bowed. "As you command. Though I confess, my lord, I've never seen you extend such protection to a human before. May I ask what makes her different?" Faelan considered the question. The honest answer was that he did not fully know yet. There was something about Marina Hayes that called to him, something beyond her connection to the conspiracy or her impressive courage. When she had fallen asleep against him, trusting him despite knowing what he was, something had shifted in his carefully controlled world. "She is different because she needs to be," Faelan said finally. "Dismissed, Revok. Get some rest before the next shift." Revok bowed again and departed, leaving Faelan alone in the corridor. The sky beyond the windows was beginning to lighten, the deep black of night fading to dark blue. Dawn was less than an hour away. Faelan needed to retreat to his chambers soon or face the painful lethargy that sunlight brought to his kind. But first, he had arrangements to make. He pulled a small communication device from his pocket, a modern concession to efficiency that the court had adopted a few decades ago. He pressed a button and waited. A woman's voice answered immediately. "My lord? Selena, I need your assistance with a sensitive matter." Lady Selene Nightraven was his spy master, the head of his intelligence network, and one of the few people he trusted absolutely. She had been with him since before he took the throne, a brilliant strategist with a talent for uncovering secrets. "I am at your disposal," Selene said. "What do you need?" "I need surveillance on the guest wing, specifically on the human woman who will be staying there, Marina Hayes. I want to know if anyone attempts to contact her, threaten her, or harm her in any way." There was a pregnant pause. "A human woman in the guest wing, under your protection. My lord, this is highly unusual." "I am aware. She is assisting with the trafficking investigation. Her sister is one of the missing humans." "I see. And you believe she is in danger?" "I believe anyone connected to this investigation is in danger," Faelan said. "Marina Hayes stumbled into this conspiracy by accident. She does not fully understand the forces arrayed against her. I need her protected." "Consider it done," Selene said smoothly. "I will assign my best agents, discreet observation only, unless intervention becomes necessary." "Thank you, Selene." "My lord, may I offer a word of advice?" "You may. Be careful. Humans are fragile in ways that have nothing to do with physical strength. They form attachments quickly and deeply. If Miss Hayes begins to depend on you, the consequences could be complicated." "I'm not in the habit of forming inappropriate attachments, Selene." "Of course not, my lord. I simply wanted to ensure you were aware of the potential complications." Faelan ended the call and made his way through the castle corridors to his private chambers. The sky continued to lighten, the first rays of sun beginning to crest the horizon. By the time he reached his rooms and secured the heavy blackout curtains, the discomfort was already starting, a prickling awareness of the deadly light beyond the walls. He had lived 600 years navigating political intrigue, warfare, and the complex dynamics of vampire society. He had survived assassination attempts, coups, and the kind of betrayals that would have destroyed lesser rulers. He knew how to protect himself, how to maintain distance, how to rule with his head rather than his heart. Yet, as he settled into the deep sleep that claimed all vampires during daylight hours, his last conscious thought was of Marina Hayes, her head resting against his shoulder, trusting him completely in the sanctuary of the library. Marina woke in a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a Gothic fairy tale. The bed was enormous, with a canopy of deep burgundy velvet and posts carved from dark wood into intricate patterns of vines and thorns. The walls were stone, but tapestries and paintings softened them, depicting landscapes and court scenes from centuries past. A fire burned in the hearth despite the late spring warmth outside, casting dancing shadows across the room. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, before memory crashed back. The library, the research. Falling asleep against the vampire king. Heat flooded her cheeks at the memory. She had actually dozed off on Faelan Sorvain, one of the most powerful beings in the supernatural world, like he was a comfortable pillow. And instead of being furious or offended, he had apparently covered her with his cloak and protected her from the guards. Marina threw back the heavy covers and stood, her bare feet sinking into thick carpets. Someone had left clothes for her, she noticed, laid out on a chair near the wardrobe. Dark jeans that looked like they would actually fit, a soft sweater in deep green, and even undergarments and socks. She felt a flutter of embarrassment at the intimacy of it, but also gratitude. Her own clothes had been travel-worn and rumpled. A bathroom connected to the bedroom, and Marina nearly gasped when she saw it. It was all marble and gold fixtures, with a tub large enough to swim in, and a shower that looked like it had about 15 different settings. She indulged in a long, hot shower, washing away the grime and exhaustion of the past few days. When she emerged, dressed in the new clothes that fit surprisingly well, she found a breakfast tray waiting on a small table near the window. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, and juice. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had barely eaten in the past day and a half. She fell on the food with undignified enthusiasm. As she ate, she thought about everything Faelan had told her. 3 or 4 days until he could move against the conspiracy. It felt like an eternity when Emily was somewhere in the underground, possibly scared or hurt or worse. But Phelan's logic was sound. Rushing in without a plan would just get them all killed. Still, waiting went against every instinct Marina had. She was a researcher, yes, but she was also a big sister. Emily was only 22, fresh out of college and full of idealistic determination to make the world better. That determination had apparently led her straight into a nightmare. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Marina called for them to enter, and a young woman with the characteristic white hair and pale skin of a vampire stepped inside. She wore elegant clothing that looked both modern and timeless, dark trousers and a fitted jacket over a silk shirt. "Miss Hayes, I am Lady Selene Nightraven," the woman said with a slight bow. "I serve Lord Faelan as his chief of intelligence. He has asked me to ensure your safety during your stay." Marina stood, suddenly feeling underdressed despite the nice clothes. "Thank you, Lady Selene. I appreciate the protection, though I'm not sure I warrant such attention." Selene's crimson eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "Lord Faelan believes you do. That is sufficient. I wanted to introduce myself and make you aware of certain realities of your situation." "What realities?" "You are a human under the king's protection in the heart of vampire territory. That makes you both privileged and vulnerable. There are factions within the court who will see you as an opportunity to embarrass or weaken Faelan. Others will simply resent your presence as a human in spaces traditionally reserved for our kind." Marina's stomach tightened. "Are you saying I'm in danger even here in the castle?" "I am saying you should be cautious. Do not wander the corridors alone. Do not accept food or drink from anyone except designated staff. If anyone approaches you with questions about Lord Faelan or your research, deflect politely and inform me immediately." Selene handed her a small device, similar to the one Marina had seen Faelan use. "This will connect you directly to me or to the king's personal guard. Use it if you feel threatened." "This is insane," Marina said, though she took the device. "I just wanted to find my sister." "And in doing so, you have become entangled in vampire politics," Selene said, not unkindly. "I do not envy your position, Miss Hayes, but I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. Lord Faelan has made your protection a priority, and I serve at his pleasure." There was something in the way Selene said it, a note of curiosity or speculation that made Marina wonder what exactly the spymaster thought was happening between her and Faelan. Before she could address it, Selene continued. "The king has asked that you join him in the library again after sunset. That gives you several hours. I suggest you rest and recover your strength. The coming days will be difficult." "I don't want to rest," Marina said. "I want to help. Is there anything I can do during the day? Research I can conduct? People I can talk to?" Selene considered. "There may be. The university district where your sister disappeared. Do you know it well? Fairly well. I did my graduate work there before transferring. There are human contacts in that area who may have information about the disappearances, information they would share with a human researcher more readily than with vampire investigators. Celine pulled out a tablet and brought up a list of names. These individuals have been flagged as potential witnesses or informants. If you were to make contact, ask subtle questions about unusual activity in the area. It could provide valuable intelligence. Marina took the tablet, scanning the names. Several were familiar, professors and students she had crossed paths with during her own time at the university. You want me to investigate? I want you to have conversations, carefully, with backup. Celine walked to the door and gestured. 2 vampires entered, both dressed in casual modern clothing that allowed them to blend in with human society. These are Varen and Lysa. They will accompany you, posing as fellow graduate students. They will keep you safe while you make your inquiries. Marina looked at the 2 vampires. Varen was tall and lean with sharp features and an air of quiet competence. Lysa was smaller, with delicate features and eyes that missed nothing. Both looked at her with professional courtesy. Lord Faelan approved this? Marina asked, surprised. Lord Faelan suggested it, Celine corrected. He believes your unique position as both an outsider and someone with genuine connections to the affected community could yield insights we have missed. However, he is adamant that you remain protected at all times. The thought that Faelan had been thinking about how to use her skills, how to make her an active participant rather than just a victim waiting for rescue, sent a warm flutter through Marina's chest. She pushed it aside, focusing on the practical matter at hand. When do we leave? Immediately, if you are ready. The sun is well up, which limits what Varen and Lysa can do, but both are old enough to tolerate brief periods of daylight with appropriate protection. You will take one of the royal vehicles with tinted windows. Marina grabbed her bag and followed Celine out of the room. As they walked through the castle corridors, she was struck by the strange dichotomy of the place. Ancient stone architecture mixed with modern lighting and technology. Priceless antiques displayed next to contemporary art. It was a building that had evolved over centuries while maintaining its essential character. They emerged into an underground garage where a sleek black car waited, its windows so heavily tinted they looked almost opaque. Varen held the door for Marina while Lysa slid into the driver's seat. Remember, subtlety is key, Celine said before they departed. You're simply a concerned researcher following up on your sister's disappearance. Let people talk. Listen more than you speak. And if anything feels wrong, leave immediately. Marina nodded and got into the car. The interior was luxurious, all leather and wood paneling. As Lysa drove them up the ramp and out into the late morning sunlight, Marina saw both vampires flinch slightly despite the protection of the tinted windows. Does it hurt? She asked. The sunlight? It is uncomfortable, Varen said from the front passenger seat, like a persistent burning sensation on the skin. Tolerable for short periods, but it wears on you. I'm sorry. If this is too much, we have endured worse in service to the crown, Lysa said, her voice calm. A few hours of discomfort is a small price to pay if it helps expose the conspiracy. They drove into the city, and Marina watched the landscape change from the isolated grandeur of the castle grounds to the urban sprawl of Ashenmoor proper. It was a city of contrasts, old districts with cobblestone streets and historic buildings nestled against modern developments of glass and steel. The university occupied a sprawling campus on the west side, its Gothic architecture fitting seamlessly with the city's character. Lysa parked near the main library, and the 3 of them made their way onto campus. Marina felt a pang of nostalgia walking these familiar paths. She had spent years here, buried in research, dreaming of academic success. Emily had followed in her footsteps, choosing the same university for her own studies. The first person on Celine's list was Professor Gideon Whitmore, who taught sociology and had apparently been asking uncomfortable questions about student disappearances for months. Marina found him in his office, a cluttered space overflowing with books and papers. Professor Whitmore was in his 60s, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him a distinctly scholarly appearance. He looked up when Marina knocked, his expression shifting from annoyance at the interruption to curiosity. "Can I help you?" "Professor Whitmore, my name is Marina Hayes. My sister Emily was one of your students last semester. She's missing." Whitmore's entire demeanor changed. He stood quickly, gesturing for her to come in and close the door. Emily Hayes. Yes, I remember her. Bright girl, very engaged with social justice issues. When did she disappear? 2 weeks ago. She was investigating disappearances in the area, similar to the ones you've been looking into. Whitmore's expression became grim. I knew it. I knew something was happening to these kids. The administration keeps telling me it's just students transferring or dropping out, but the pattern is wrong. Too many at once, too concentrated in specific areas. What areas? Marina asked, pulling out a notebook. Whitmore spread a map of the city across his desk, marked with red dots. These are locations where students were last seen before disappearing. Notice anything? Marina studied the map. The red dots formed clusters around certain neighborhoods, but they all seem to radiate from central points. They're concentrated around old parts of the city, historic districts. Exactly, and if you overlay this with a map of the old city infrastructure. Whitmore pulled out another map, this one showing underground tunnels and passages. The disappearances cluster around known access points to the subterranean levels. Marina's heart raced. This confirmed what Faelan had suspected. Have you taken this to the police? Multiple times. They're not interested. They say the correlation is coincidental, that students go missing from urban campuses all the time. Whitmore's frustration was evident. But I know something is wrong. Some of these kids had no reason to vanish. They were doing well academically, had strong support systems, plans for the future. They don't fit the profile for voluntary disappearance. Did Emily talk to you about her research? Yes. She came to me about 3 weeks ago with some of the same data I had collected. We compared notes. She was convinced there was a criminal element involved, possibly human trafficking. Whitmore paused. She mentioned something else, too. She said she had a contact who claimed vampires were involved. Marina felt Varen shift slightly behind her, a subtle movement that reminded her she was not alone. Did she say who this contact was? No. She was protecting her source, but she seemed to take the vampire angle seriously, which surprised me. Emily was a rational, evidence-based thinker. If she thought vampires were involved, she must have had compelling reasons. She did, Marina said quietly. Professor, I need you to be careful. If my sister disappeared because of what she knew, anyone following the same trail might be at risk. Whitmore's jaw set stubbornly. I'm not going to stop looking for answers just because it might be dangerous. These are my students. Someone has to advocate for them. Marina understood that sentiment completely. She thanked Whitmore for his time and promised to stay in touch. As they left his office, Lissa leaned in close. He's being watched, she murmured. I can sense observers nearby, not human. Should we warn him? Marina asked. He is likely safer if he continues his normal routine, Varen said. Drawing attention to our interest in him could make him a target. They moved on to the next contact, a student named Thomas Chen who had been friends with several of the disappeared. Thomas was harder to find, but they eventually located him in the student center, working on a laptop while nursing a coffee. Marina approached carefully, introducing herself as Emily's sister. Thomas's eyes widened with recognition and something else, fear perhaps. I wondered if someone would come looking for her, Thomas said, glancing around nervously. Emily was asking questions about stuff that made people uncomfortable. What kind of stuff? The disappearances, yeah, but also about the vampire community. She had this theory that vampires and humans were both being victimized, that there was some kind of underground operation that crossed both worlds. Thomas lowered his voice. She showed me evidence, financial records, eyewitness accounts, stuff that should have been investigated but wasn't. Do you know where she got this evidence? Some of it she found herself, but she also had a source inside the vampire government, someone high up who was feeding her information. Thomas leaned forward. Look, I don't know what you're planning to do, but you should know that people have been asking about you. People who don't feel right. Marina's blood chilled. What do you mean? Don't feel right? I don't know how to explain it. They look normal, but something about them is off, cold, predatory. They've been hanging around campus, asking if anyone has seen you or knows how to contact you. Varen and Lissa exchanged glances. Describe them, Lissa commanded, her voice sharp. Thomas described 2 individuals, a man and a woman, both pale with an otherworldly quality. Vampires, almost certainly, but not ones acting under official sanction if they were skulking around asking questions. If you see them again, do not engage, Varen told Thomas, and if they approach Miss Hayes, you run and alert campus security immediately. Thomas nodded, clearly frightened now. Marina thanked him, and they moved away, but she could feel the weight of unseen eyes on her back. They know you are here, Lisa said as they walked quickly toward the car. The conspirators, they are hunting you. Then we need to leave, Marina said, fighting down panic. Agreed. They made it back to the car without incident, but Marina's nerves were frayed by the time they returned to the castle. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Faelan would be waking soon. Celine met them in the garage, her expression grave. You were followed for part of your journey. We had additional teams shadowing you who dealt with the surveillance, but this confirms our fears. The conspiracy knows about Miss Hayes and sees her as a threat. Or as bait, Varen added darkly. Marina felt sick. They might be using me to draw out Faelan. Possibly, which is why you will not leave the castle again without direct authorization from Lord Faelan himself. Celine guided Marina back toward the guest wing. What did you learn from your contacts? Marina relayed everything Professor Whitmore and Thomas Chen had told her, including the detail about Emily having a source inside the vampire government. Selena's expression grew increasingly troubled. A source inside the government. That means the conspiracy is even more deeply rooted than we feared. Selena stopped outside Marina's room. Lord Faelan needs to hear this immediately. Will you join me in briefing him? Of course. They made their way through the castle to Faelan's private chambers. Celine knocked and was immediately granted entry. The rooms beyond were surprisingly understated for a king, Marina thought. Rich furnishings, yes, but more functional than ostentatious. Books everywhere, maps and documents spread across tables, the organized chaos of someone who actually worked rather than simply presided. Faelan emerged from an adjoining room, and Marina's breath caught slightly. He wore dark clothing that somehow managed to look both casual and regal, his white hair falling loose around his shoulders, his crimson eyes sharp and alert. He looked every inch the vampire king, powerful and commanding. But when he saw Marina, something in his expression softened fractionally. Miss Hayes, Celine, report. Celine efficiently summarized the day's events, including the intelligence Marina had gathered and the concerning fact that she had been under surveillance. Faelan's jaw tightened with each detail. They are moving more quickly than I anticipated, he said when Celine finished. If they know about Marina and are actively hunting her, we may not have the luxury of waiting for the noble gathering. What are you suggesting, my lord? Celine asked. Faelan walked to a large map of the city mounted on the wall. He traced his finger along lines representing the underground tunnels. Marina's contact, Professor Whitmore, identified cluster points for the disappearances. If we cross-reference those with the financial data and known access points, we should be able to narrow down potential locations for holding facilities. You want to raid them, Marina said. I want to gather enough evidence to justify a raid, Faelan corrected. But yes, ultimately we will need to move against these locations with force. The question is timing and legal justification. What about Emily? Marina asked, hating how her voice cracked. If we wait too long? I know. Faelan turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her feel pinned in place. I have not forgotten your sister, Marina. Every decision I make factors in her safety. But I must also think about the dozens of other victims being held and the stability of our entire society. If I act rashly and fail, everyone suffers. Marina wanted to argue, but she could see the weight he carried. This was not just about one missing woman or even one conspiracy. This was about maintaining a balance between two worlds, about proving that vampire leadership could protect both their own kind and humanity. I understand, she said quietly. I don't like it, but I understand. Something flickered in Faelan's eyes, approval perhaps, or respect. He returned his attention to the map. Celine, I need surveillance on these 3 locations by tomorrow night. Covert observation only, no engagement. I want to know what goes in and out, who is involved, and what kind of security we are facing. Consider it done, my lord. And Marina stays in the castle under maximum protection. No more field trips, no matter how valuable the intelligence. Agreed. Faelan turned to Marina. I know confinement will frustrate you, but right now you are too valuable as a hostage for me to risk your capture. The conspirators would use you against me without hesitation." The implication of his words hung in the air. Marina was valuable not just because of what she knew, but because of what she was beginning to mean to him. The thought should have terrified her, or at least made her uncomfortable. Instead, it sent a warm flutter through her chest. "I'll stay in the castle," Marina agreed, "but I want to help with the research and planning. I'm not going to sit in my room doing nothing while my sister is out there." A hint of a smile touched Faelan's lips. "I would expect nothing less. Join me in the library tonight. We have much work to do." Over the next 2 days, Marina fell into a strange routine. She slept during the day when Faelan was forced into his death-like slumber and worked through the night alongside him in the library. They pored over documents, built timelines, and constructed an ironclad case against the conspirators. Celine's surveillance teams reported back with disturbing findings. All 3 target locations showed signs of activity consistent with prison facilities. People went in but rarely came out. Deliveries of food and supplies in quantities that suggested multiple occupants. Security that was far more sophisticated than abandoned buildings should warrant. But more concerning were the identities of some of the vampires observed at these locations. High-ranking nobles from houses Faelan had considered allies, military officers who should have been loyal to the crown, even a member of the royal council itself. "This goes higher than I thought," Faelan said on the second night, staring at surveillance photos spread across the library table. "These are not fringe elements or rogue actors. These are pillars of our society." Marina watched him process the betrayal. She had seen him maintain perfect composure, even when discussing the darkest aspects of the conspiracy, but this revelation seemed to cut deeper. These were people he had trusted, worked with, perhaps even considered friends. "What will you do?" she asked gently. "What I must." Faelan's voice was cold, emotionless in that way she recognized as his shield against pain. "Expose them, strip them of their positions, ensure they face justice for their crimes. That's going to cause upheaval in your government. Yes, but the alternative is allowing the corruption to continue, and that is unacceptable." Faelan met her eyes. "You asked me once why I was helping you. Part of the answer is that I believe in the principles I swore to uphold. If I compromise those principles to protect the powerful, I am no better than they are." Marina moved closer to him, drawn by the pain she could see beneath his controlled exterior. "For what it's worth, I think you're a good king. Emily believed vampires could be better than the stories humans tell about them. I think she would have liked knowing you were trying to prove her right." Faelan studied her face with that unsettling intensity he sometimes displayed. "You are very trusting for someone who should know better." "I trust what I've seen. You protected me when you could have thrown me out. You are risking political stability to save my sister and others like her. You are holding yourself to standards most leaders would never consider." Marina took a breath. "And when I fell asleep against you in this library, you made sure I was comfortable instead of waking me up. That says a lot about who you are." Something shifted in Faelan's expression. The careful control cracked, just slightly, revealing raw emotion beneath. He reached out, his pale fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected tenderness. "You are dangerous, Marina Hayes," he said softly. "More dangerous than any conspiracy or political rival, because you make me want things I should not want, feel things I cannot afford to feel." Marina's heart hammered in her chest. "What do you want?" "You. Against all logic and wisdom, I want you." The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Marina knew she should step back, should maintain the professional distance appropriate to their relationship. He was a vampire king. She was a human graduate student. This could not work. But when Faelan cupped her face in his hands and looked at her like she was something precious, all the logical objections melted away. "I want you too," she whispered. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like Marina had imagined kissing a vampire would be. His lips were cool but not cold, gentle but possessive. The kiss spoke of centuries of restraint finally breaking, of emotions too long denied. Marina melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt, her entire world narrowing to this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Faelan rested his forehead against hers. This is madness. Probably, Marina agreed. I don't care. You should. I am vampire royalty. You are human. The complications are endless. Then we will deal with them together. Marina pulled back enough to look him in the eye. Unless you are going to tell me this was a mistake and we should pretend it never happened? No. Faelan's arms tightened around her. I am many things, Marina, but I am not a coward. If we are doing this, we do it honestly and completely. Damn the consequences. The sound of rapid footsteps in the corridor interrupted them. Selene burst through the library door, her usually composed expression tight with urgency. My lord, we have a situation. One of the surveillance teams has gone silent. Last transmission indicated they discovered evidence of an imminent move operation at location 2. Faelan was immediately in command mode, the tender lover transforming back into the strategic king. How long since last contact? 20 minutes. I have sent backup teams, but Selene hesitated. My lord, if they have been captured, the conspirators now know we are onto them. They may move to eliminate evidence, including prisoners. Emily, Marina breathed, fear clenching her stomach. Faelan turned to her, conflict clear on his face. He was torn between caution and action, between protecting her and saving her sister. Marina made the decision for him. We have to move now. If there is even a chance Emily is at that location and they are planning to relocate or eliminate prisoners, we cannot wait. It could be a trap, Selene warned. They may be using the missing team to draw you out, my lord. Then I will spring their trap and turn it against them. Faelan's voice was hard as stone. Assemble a strike force. I want our best fighters and full tactical support. We hit location 2 in 30 minutes. My lord, you should not go personally. The risk is mine to take. I have spent 2 centuries giving orders from a throne. Tonight, I lead from the front. Faelan looked at Marina. You stay here with a full security detail. If something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you, Marina said fiercely. You are going to raid that facility, save my sister and everyone else being held, and come back. That is the only acceptable outcome. Despite the gravity of the situation, Faelan almost smiled. Your confidence is noted. Selene, see to Miss Hayes' protection. I want her locked down until this is resolved. The next hour was the longest of Marina's life. Selene had escorted her back to the guest wing and posted guards outside her door. The spymaster remained with her, monitoring reports from the strike force through her communication device. Marina paced the room, unable to sit still. Somewhere across the city, Faelan was leading an assault against vampires who would not hesitate to kill him if given the chance. Her sister might be in that building, scared and alone. The man she had just admitted her feelings for was walking into danger because she had pushed him to act. He knows what he is doing, Selene said, watching Marina pace. Lord Faelan is one of the oldest and most powerful vampires in the region. He did not survive this long by being reckless. He is only doing this now because of me, because I could not wait, because I pushed for action. No, he is doing this because it is the right thing to do and the window for safe action is closing. Selene set down her device and looked at Marina directly. You care for him. It was not a question. Marina stopped pacing. Is it that obvious? To someone who has known him for centuries, yes, and he cares for you, which is far more surprising. Lord Faelan has not allowed anyone close in longer than I can remember. He has lovers occasionally, political alliances, but nothing that touches him emotionally. Selene's expression was unreadable. You have reached him in ways I did not think possible. I don't understand why. I'm just a graduate student who stumbled into his library. You are a woman who challenged him, stood up to him, and showed courage in the face of overwhelming danger. You treated him as a person, not a title. For someone who has been surrounded by sycophants and political maneuvering for centuries, that is intoxicating. Before Marina could respond, Selene's device crackled to life. A voice came through, urgent and strained. Lady Selene, we have breached the facility, multiple hostages located, some injuries but mostly alive. No sign of Lord Faelan's strike team yet. They went in the east entrance. Selene responded with clipped commands, coordinating the extraction. Marina held her breath, waiting for news about Emily, about Faelan, about anyone. Another transmission. We have a problem. The facility is rigged to collapse. Demolition charges throughout the structure. Someone is trying to bring the whole building down with everyone inside. Marina's vision swam. Faelan, Is aware and dealing with it, Celine said, her voice tight. She spoke into the device. All teams evacuate immediately, get the hostages out and fall back to safe perimeter. More chatter over the line. Reports of prisoners being carried out, of structural instability, of fires starting in the lower levels. The building was a death trap designed to eliminate evidence and witnesses. Then, cutting through the chaos, Faelan's voice. Celine, I have located Emily Hayes. She is alive but injured. I'm extracting her now. Marina's legs nearly gave out. Emily was alive, hurt, but alive. My lord, the building is coming down, Celine said urgently. You need to leave now. 60 seconds. I have her. Those 60 seconds stretched into eternity. Marina clutched the edge of the table, silently begging any god who might be listening to protect them both. Please, please let them make it out. An explosion rumbled through the communication line, then static, then nothing. Faelan! Celine shouted into the device. Lord Faelan, respond! Silence. Marina felt her heart stop. No, this could not be happening. She had just found him, just admitted her feelings. He could not die now. He could not leave her like this. More silence. Then, faint and crackling, Faelan's voice. We are clear. Building is down, but we are clear. Emily Hayes is unconscious but stable, returning to base. Marina collapsed into a chair, shaking with relief so intense it felt like physical pain. Celine allowed herself a brief moment of visible emotion, closing her eyes and taking a steadying breath. He will be the death of me one of these days, Celine muttered. Heroics. After 600 years, you would think he would learn to delegate. But Marina could hear the affection beneath the annoyance. Celine cared about Faelan, had probably watched over him for centuries. The spy master met Marina's eyes, and something passed between them, an understanding. They are bringing the rescued prisoners to the castle medical wing. Your sister will receive the best care available. Celine stood. Come. I imagine you will want to be there when they arrive. Marina followed Celine through the castle corridors to a wing she had not visited before. The medical facilities were state-of-the-art, a blend of modern technology and what looked like magical apparatus. Healers, both vampire and human, were preparing beds and supplies for incoming patients. The first arrivals were brought in on stretchers, pale and malnourished but alive. Marina scanned each face desperately, looking for Emily. Where was she? Faelan had said he found her, that she was injured. Then she saw him. Faelan strode through the entrance, carrying a young woman in his arms with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his battle-worn appearance. His clothes were torn and singed, his white hair disheveled, but his grip on his burden was steady and protective. And the woman he carried was Emily. Marina ran to them, her vision blurring with tears. Emily looked terrible, thin and pale, with bruises mottling her skin and bandages wrapped around one arm, but her chest rose and fell with steady breathing. She was alive. Emily! Marina sobbed, reaching out to touch her sister's hand. Faelan carefully transferred Emily to one of the waiting beds, allowing the healers to swarm around her. He caught Marina's arm, steadying her. She will be all right. The injuries look worse than they are. Malnutrition and dehydration mostly, some minor wounds. The healers will have her recovered within days. Marina threw her arms around Faelan, not caring about protocol or propriety. She buried her face against his chest and cried, releasing 2 weeks of terror and stress and desperate hope. Faelan held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soothing words in a language she did not understand, but felt in her bones. When Marina finally pulled herself together enough to step back, she looked up at him. His face was streaked with ash and blood, his expression weary but triumphant. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for saving her. I made a promise to you, Faelan said simply. I keep my promises. Over the next hour, the full scope of what they had accomplished became clear. The raid had rescued 43 prisoners, both human and vampire, who had been held in deplorable conditions. The facility had been destroyed in the evacuation, but not before Faelan's teams secured extensive evidence documenting the conspiracy. The cost had been significant. 3 members of the strike force had been seriously injured when parts of the building collapsed. The missing surveillance team had been found dead, killed before the raid began, and the conspirators had managed to escape the facility before the assault, disappearing into the underground networks. But they had evidence, documented proof of the trafficking operation, financial records linking it to specific nobles, and testimony from the rescued prisoners. It was everything Faelan needed to move against the corrupt elements of his government. He called an emergency session of the full court for the following night. Emily woke a few hours before dawn, groggy but conscious. Marina was sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. The moment Emily's eyes opened, Marina started crying again. "Mari?" Emily's voice was rough from disuse. "Is that really you?" "It's me. I'm here. You are safe now." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "They took me. I was following a lead and they just grabbed me off the street. I thought—" She could not finish the sentence. I know you were scared. But you are safe now. The Vampire King himself rescued you." Emily's eyes widened. "Faelan Sorvain, he is real?" "Very real, and he is going to make sure the people who took you face justice." Over the next few hours, Emily told Marina everything. How she had discovered the trafficking network through her research. How a contact within the vampire government had started feeding her information, warning her that the conspiracy went to the highest levels. How she had been gathering evidence to take to human authorities when the conspirators realized what she knew and kidnapped her. She described her captivity in halting words, the fear, the other prisoners who had been there far longer, the terrible knowledge that they might all simply disappear without anyone knowing what happened to them. "But you came," Emily said, gripping Marina's hand. "You found me. I had help. A lot of help." Marina glanced toward the door where she knew guards were posted. "The vampire world is more complicated than we ever imagined, Em. There is corruption, yes, but there is also honor and justice. Faelan is trying to root out the evil in his own society." "You call him Faelan, not Lord Sorvain or your Majesty." Marina felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We have been working closely together. He is not what I expected." Emily studied her sister's face with surprising clarity for someone who had just woken from captivity. "You care about him. Is it that obvious? You are glowing when you talk about him, and you look exhausted, which means you have been awake all night matching his schedule." Emily managed a weak smile. "My sister fell for the Vampire King. That is very on brand for our family's tendency toward dramatic life choices." Marina laughed despite everything. "Get some rest. The healers say you need to sleep and recover your strength. I will be here when you wake up." Emily's eyes were already drifting closed. "Love you, Mari. Thanks for not giving up on me." "Never. I will always find you." Marina stayed with Emily until she fell into deeper sleep, then made her way back through the castle. Dawn was approaching, which meant Faelan would be retiring soon. She found him in his chambers, washing blood and ash from his skin in the bathroom. He emerged wearing only dark trousers, his torso bare, revealing the lean, muscled form of a predator built for speed and power. Marina tried not to stare and failed completely. "Your sister's recovering well, I hear," Faelan said, toweling his hair dry. "Yes, thanks to you." Marina walked closer, unable to maintain distance. "You ran into a collapsing building to save her." "I ran into a collapsing building to save all of the prisoners. Emily simply happened to be among them." "Liar, you went to that section specifically because I told you she might be there. You risked your life for my sister." Faelan set down the towel and regarded her steadily. "I risked my life because it was necessary, and because I could not bear the thought of facing you if I failed to save her. Your pain would have been unbearable." The raw honesty of the statement struck Marina silent. This powerful ancient being cared about her happiness enough to risk his own existence. The magnitude of that was overwhelming. "The court session tomorrow," she said, changing the subject, before emotions swamped her completely. "What will happen?" "I will present the evidence. I will call for the arrest and trial of everyone implicated. There will be resistance, possibly violence. Some nobles will see this as a power grab, an excuse to eliminate rivals." Faelan pulled on a shirt covering the distracting expanse of pale skin. "It will be the most dangerous political moment of my reign. What can I do to help?" "Survive. Testify if needed about your sister's kidnapping and the human victims. And after it is over," Faelan stepped close to her, cupping her face in his hands. "After it is over, we will need to have a serious conversation about what this is between us." I already know what it is, Marina said, covering his hands with her own. I love you. It is insane and probably doomed and absolutely terrifying. But I love you. Faelan closed his eyes briefly, as if her words pained him. I have lived 600 years without saying those words to anyone, without feeling them. But Marina Hayes, you have undone me completely. I love you. With everything I am, with all my dark immortal soul, I love you. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, as if trying to memorize the feel of her lips. Marina kissed him back with equal intensity, pouring all her fear and hope and love into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, the sky beyond the windows was lightening. Faelan looked genuinely regretful. I must sleep. The sun is nearly up. But tonight, after the court session, we will finish this conversation properly. Promise. I swear it. Marina left him reluctantly, making her way back to her own chambers. She slept fitfully during the day, plagued by dreams of collapsing buildings and vampire courts. When she woke in the late afternoon, a message was waiting from Celine. The court session had been moved up. It would begin at sunset. Marina's presence was requested but not required. She could stay in her room where it was safe, or she could attend and watch Faelan fight for justice. There was no real choice. Marina dressed in the most formal clothing that had been provided, dark trousers and a deep red blouse that felt appropriately serious. She made her way to the great hall where the court assembled, flanked by guards who treated her with surprising deference. The great hall was massive, a soaring space of stone pillars and vaulted ceilings. Vampires filled the chamber, hundreds of them, all turned to watch as Marina entered. She felt the weight of their attention, their curiosity, and in some cases, their hostility. A human in their most sacred space, attending their highest political gathering. Celine appeared at her side, guiding her to a seat near the front but off to the side. You are here as an observer and potential witness. Say nothing unless directly addressed by Lord Faelan or the court magistrate. Marina nodded, her mouth too dry for speech. She watched as the vampire nobles arranged themselves in a complex hierarchy she did not fully understand. Ancient families occupying positions of honor, military leaders in their formal uniforms, council members in robes denoting their positions. Then Faelan entered, and the entire chamber fell silent. He wore regalia Marina had never seen before, black and silver that marked him unmistakably as royalty. A circlet of dark metal rested on his white hair, not quite a crown but clearly symbolic of his authority. He moved with lethal grace to a raised platform at the front of the hall. This court is now in session, Faelan's voice carried through the space without needing amplification. We are gathered to address matters of utmost gravity concerning the security and honor of our realm. He began presenting the evidence methodically, building his case piece by piece. Financial records showing illegal transactions, testimony from rescued prisoners describing their captivity, surveillance documentation linking specific individuals to the trafficking facilities. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the hall grew more charged. Some vampires looked shocked and outraged. Others shifted uncomfortably, their guilt evident. A few maintained expressions of cold defiance. When Faelan named the first conspirator, a noble named Lord Draven Ashworth, the accused vampire stood and laughed. You have orchestrated this entire spectacle, Sorvain. You manufacture evidence and rescue convenient witnesses to justify eliminating your political opposition. It is a transparent power grab. Then you deny involvement in illegal blood trafficking? Faelan's voice was ice. I deny your right to make these accusations without proper oversight. You have become a tyrant, ruling by fiat rather than law. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber. Faelan had known this would happen, Marina realized. He had known they would try to turn this around on him, make him the villain. Very well, Faelan said calmly. Let us establish oversight. I call upon the ancient right of testimony. Let those with direct knowledge of these crimes speak before this assembled court. One by one, the rescued prisoners were brought forward. They told their stories, describing their kidnappings, their captivity, the vampires who had held them and fed on them illegally. Their testimony was powerful and damning. Then Faelan called Emily Hayes. Marina's sister appeared, still weak but determined. She walked to the center of the hall with her head high, refusing to be intimidated by the hundreds of vampire eyes watching her. State your name and your connection to these events, Faelan commanded. Emily Hayes. I am a graduate student who was investigating disappearances in Ashenmoor. I discovered evidence of a trafficking network targeting both humans and vampires. When I got too close to the truth, I was kidnapped and held prisoner for 2 weeks. And who held you prisoner? Emily pointed directly at Lord Draven. That vampire. I saw him multiple times at the facility. He gave orders to the guards. He is one of the leaders of the operation. Draven's composure cracked. You lie. You are a human pawn coached by Sorvain to support his narrative. I am a human who was kidnapped, starved, and terrorized by vampires who should have been protecting me according to your own laws, Emily shot back. My sister risked everything to find me because your king actually gives a damn about justice. If that makes me a pawn, then I am proud to be one. The hall erupted into argument. Factions supporting Faelan shouted down those defending the accused. It was chaos, exactly what Faelan had feared. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the vampires Marina had seen among Faelan's strike force stepped forward. I have additional evidence to present. Faelan gestured for silence. Speak, Commander Theron. During the raid, we recovered computer systems from the facility before it was destroyed. My technical teams have been analyzing the data. We found communication records that prove Lord Draven and his co-conspirators were not only running the trafficking network, but were planning a coup against Lord Faelan's rule. They intended to use the profits from illegal blood sales to fund a military uprising. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. A trafficking conspiracy was one thing. Treason and planned regicide was another matter entirely. Commander Theron presented the evidence, messages between Draven and other conspirators discussing their plans. It was irrefutable proof not just of the trafficking crimes, but of a coordinated attempt to overthrow the legitimate government. The tide turned decisively. Even vampires who had been sympathetic to Draven's claims of persecution could not ignore evidence of treason. When Faelan called for a vote on whether to arrest the accused conspirators and hold them for formal trial, the result was overwhelming. Lord Draven and 6 other vampires were taken into custody by the Royal Guard. They went without resistance, knowing that fighting now would only confirm their guilt. Faelan addressed the court one final time. This conspiracy threatened everything we have built, the peace between our world and the human world, the trust between our people and their leaders, the very principles of justice that separate us from monsters. His gaze swept the chamber. I will not allow that corruption to stand. Anyone involved in these crimes will face full prosecution under our laws, and I will personally ensure that the human victims receive compensation and support for what they have endured. He gestured to Marina. Marina Hayes, sister of one of the victims, please stand. Marina rose on shaky legs, suddenly the focus of hundreds of vampires. You came to our realm seeking justice for your sister. You refused to give up even when faced with powers beyond your understanding. Your courage and determination helped expose this conspiracy. Faelan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You have the gratitude of the crown and permanent protection under our law. You and your sister are welcome in our territories always. The vampires who supported Faelan applauded. It was not universal support, but it was enough. Marina had been publicly recognized and protected by the king himself. Anyone who moved against her now would be defying royal decree. The court session concluded with instructions for the formal trials that would follow. As the vampires began to disperse, Celine appeared at Marina's side again. Well handled, both of you. The spymaster allowed herself a small smile. Lord Faelan will need to meet with various officials and commanders now, addressing the fallout from tonight's revelations. But he asked me to tell you that he will find you when he is finished, no matter how late. Marina nodded, understanding. The king had duties to perform. She returned to the medical wing to check on Emily, who had been taken back to her bed after her testimony. Her sister was sitting up, looking exhausted but triumphant. Did we do it? Did we actually expose them? You did it, Marina said, hugging Emily carefully. You were amazing, brave and strong and perfect. I was terrified the entire time, but I kept thinking about all the other people they hurt, and I got angry instead of scared. Emily pulled back to look at Marina. So when do I get to properly meet the vampire king who saved me and stole my sister's heart? He did not steal anything. I gave it freely. Even better. Emily smiled. He loves you too, you know. It is obvious in the way he looks at you, like you are the only person in the room who matters. Marina felt warmth spread through her chest. I know. We are still figuring out what that means, how to make this work when we are from completely different worlds. You will figure it out. You're both too stubborn and too smart to let anything stop you. Marina stayed with Emily for a few hours, talking about everything and nothing, just enjoying the relief of having her sister safe. Eventually, Emily fell asleep again, healing taking its toll. Marina made her way back through the castle corridors, not ready to return to her room, but unsure where else to go. Her feet carried her to the library, the place where this had all started. She pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the familiar space. Faelan was already there, standing by the window where moonlight painted him in silver. He turned as she entered, and the careful control he maintained in public fell away. He looked tired and raw and absolutely beautiful. I thought I would find you here, Marina said softly. I needed somewhere quiet to think. This library has always been my refuge. Faelan crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. It is done. The conspirators are in custody, the evidence secured. There will be trials and political fallout, but the immediate crisis has passed. And what about us? Marina asked, her voice muffled against his chest. Where do we go from here? Faelan pulled back enough to look at her face. That depends on what you want. I am Vampire King. My duties tie me to this realm, to these people. I cannot simply walk away from my responsibilities. I would never ask you to. But I cannot ask you to give up your life, your dreams, your world to stay in mine. It would be profoundly selfish. Marina considered. Her academic career, her research, all the plans she had made for her future, they all seemed distant and unimportant compared to the man in front of her. But she also knew that sacrificing everything would breed resentment eventually. What if we found a balance, she suggested. I could continue my studies, maybe even focus on vampire-human relations and cultural integration. There's so much humans do not understand about your world. I could help bridge that gap. And you could, she trailed off, realizing she had no idea what compromises a vampire king could make. I could ensure that you have freedom and support to pursue your work, Faelan finished. I could make certain that loving me does not mean losing yourself. And when my duties allow, I could be with you, learning about your world as you learn about mine. That sounds like a relationship. A real, actual relationship with communication and compromise. Revolutionary, I know. Faelan's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Marina, I have lived for 6 centuries without finding anyone who made me want this. Want partnership and compromise and all the messy complications of caring deeply for another person. I do not want to lose you now that I have found you. Then do not lose me. Keep me. Marina stood on her toes and kissed him. I am yours if you want me. For as long as you want me. Forever then. I want you forever. They kissed again, deeper and more urgent, sealing the promise between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, despite Faelan not strictly needing to breathe, he rested his forehead against hers. There will be challenges. Opposition from elements who think humans have no place in our world. Logistical complications about how we divide our time. Questions about the future when you age and I do not. We will face them together, Marina said firmly. Whatever comes, we face it together. Together, Faelan agreed. I rather like the sound of that. They stayed in the library until nearly dawn, talking about possibilities and plans. Marina would finish her current degree while living partially at the castle and partially in the human city. She would begin research on vampire-human integration with full access to Faelan's archives and resources. Emily, once recovered, would join the effort if she wished, her expertise valuable in understanding the human perspective. Faelan would continue his reforms, using the exposure of the conspiracy as leverage to push through changes that had been stalled by conservative factions. He would formalize protections for humans in vampire territories and establish better channels of communication between the two worlds, and they would be together, navigating the complications as they came. Over the following weeks, the plan began to take shape. The trials of the conspirators proceeded with public transparency that shocked the vampire world. Faelan insisted on full disclosure, allowing human observers and even media coverage of certain aspects. It was unprecedented and controversial, but it sent a clear message. The vampire realm would no longer operate in shadows and secrets. Lord Draven and his co-conspirators were found guilty and sentenced to imprisonment and magical binding that would prevent them from using their powers. It was the most severe punishment available short of execution, and it satisfied both vampire law and human expectations of justice. The rescued prisoners received reparations from the Crown and ongoing support. Several chose to remain connected to the vampire world in various capacities, their experiences giving them unique insights. Others wanted nothing more than to return to normal life with their memories of the trauma magically eased, but not erased. Emily recovered fully and decided to pursue a graduate degree in vampire studies, working alongside Marina. The sisters became fixtures in the castle library, often found buried in research, with Faelan contributing his centuries of knowledge to their work. Marina moved her belongings into a suite of rooms in the castle that connected to Faelan's chambers through a private door. She kept her apartment in the city for when she needed to be on the university campus, but the castle became her true home. The vampire court gradually accepted her presence, some more graciously than others. Lady Selene became a friend and mentor, teaching Marina the complexities of vampire politics and social dynamics. Other members of Faelan's inner circle followed Selene's lead, extending genuine welcome to the human woman their king loved. There were difficult moments, vampires who challenged Marina's right to be there, who questioned Faelan's judgment in allowing a human so close to power. Moments when Marina felt overwhelmed by the differences between her world and Faelan's, when she missed the simplicity of her old life. But there were far more beautiful moments, falling asleep in Faelan's arms as dawn broke, safe and cherished, working beside him in the library, their minds complementing each other perfectly. Walking through the castle gardens at midnight, his hand warm in hers despite the coolness of his skin. Learning to exist in his world while maintaining her own identity. Growing and changing without losing herself. 6 months after that first night when Marina dozed off against the Vampire King's arm in the library, Faelan called another session of the court. Marina attended, no longer nervous about the assembled vampires. She had earned their respect through her work and her unwavering support of their king. Faelan made an announcement that shocked even those who knew him best. He was establishing a formal position within the government, Ambassador for Human Relations, and he was appointing Marina Hayes to fill it. The position would give Marina official authority to advocate for human interests, to review policies affecting humans in vampire territories, and to serve as a bridge between the two worlds. It was a revolutionary step, one that acknowledged humans as partners rather than subjects. Some vampires protested, arguing that no human should hold such power. But Faelan's supporters, bolstered by the success of the conspiracy trials and the positive response from human authorities, carried the vote. Marina accepted the position with a speech that emphasized cooperation and mutual understanding. She spoke of her sister's experience, of the humans and vampires who had been victimized by those who saw people as commodities. She spoke of Faelan's vision for a world where both species could coexist with dignity and respect. When she finished, even some of the skeptics applauded. That night, alone in their chambers, Faelan pulled Marina into his arms and kissed her with the kind of passion that still took her breath away after 6 months together. "You were magnificent tonight," he murmured against her lips, "commanding and eloquent, every inch the ambassador you will be." "I was terrified," Marina admitted, "but I kept thinking about what you told me once, about how courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. I am fairly certain I was quoting someone else when I said that. Then we are both plagiarizing. I will not tell if you do not." Marina traced the line of his jaw, marveling as she always did at the beauty of him. "Thank you for believing in me, for trusting me with this responsibility. You earned it. The position, the trust, all of it." Faelan caught her hand and kissed her palm. "I have a question for you, one I've been considering for some time." Marina's heart skipped. "I am listening. In the vampire world, we do not have marriages exactly as humans understand them. But we have bonding ceremonies, magical contracts that tie two souls together for as long as both shall live. They are rare, reserved for connections of profound depth and commitment." Faelan met her eyes. Marina Hayes, would you consider bonding with me? Joining your life to mine in the eyes of my people and whatever gods might be listening? Marina felt tears prick her eyes. Is that a vampire proposal? It is the closest equivalent. I realize it is fast by human standards, only 6 months, but yes. Marina cut him off, laughing through her tears. Yes, absolutely yes. I will bond with you, marry you, whatever ceremony or contract or magic will make us officially together. Yes. Faelan's expression transformed, joy breaking through his usually controlled demeanor. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, pouring 6 centuries of loneliness and longing into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling like fools. I love you, Faelan said, the words coming easier now after months of practice. My fierce, brilliant, impossibly brave human. I love you. I love you too. My dramatic, overprotective, secretly soft vampire king. I love you so much. They held each other as the moon traced its path across the sky. 2 souls from different worlds who had found each other against all odds. There would be challenges ahead, complications, and conflicts inevitable when bridging such different existences. But they would face them together, as partners and equals. The bonding ceremony took place a month later in the castle's ancient chapel. It was a small gathering, close friends and family only. Emily stood as Marina's witness, while Celine filled the same role for Faelan. The ceremony itself was beautiful and strange, conducted in Old Valethian, with translation for the human guests. When the magical binding was complete, Marina felt something shift deep in her soul, a connection to Faelan that went beyond the physical. She could sense his emotions, feel his love and devotion wrapping around her like a protective shield. And Faelan, for the first time in 600 years, felt truly complete. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn, vampires and humans mingling with surprising ease. It was a glimpse of the future Marina and Faelan were working toward, a world where the 2 species could coexist not just peacefully, but joyfully. As the sun began to rise and the vampire guests departed for their daytime rest, Faelan pulled Marina close. We should retire as well. Even bonded humans need sleep. So do bonded vampires, as I recall. True, though I find myself reluctant to close my eyes and end this perfect night. Marina smiled up at him, this powerful ancient being who looked at her like she hung the moon. The night is ending, but we have thousands more ahead of us. A whole lifetime of nights. A lifetime, Faelan agreed, wonder in his voice. I never thought I would want that with anyone. But with you, Marina, a lifetime is not nearly enough. I would take eternity if it were offered. They made their way to their chambers hand in hand, the first rays of sun painting the sky beyond the windows. In the distance, the city of Ashenmore was waking, humans beginning their day while vampires retreated into sleep. 2 worlds operating on different rhythms, but not separate anymore, not divided. Marina and Faelan had proven that connection was possible, that love could bridge even the widest chasms. Their work was far from finished. There were still prejudices to overcome, systems to reform, minds to change. But they had made a start, and they would continue together. As they settled into bed, Faelan's arms wrapped around Marina. She thought about that first night in the library. How she had been so exhausted she dozed off against his arm. How he had protected her and covered her with his cloak instead of having her thrown out. How the guards had been stunned by his tenderness. That moment had been the beginning of everything. A small act of unexpected kindness that bloomed into love, partnership, and a future neither of them could have imagined. What are you thinking about? Faelan murmured, his voice drowsy. About how I fell asleep on you in the library. About how that moment changed my entire life. Mine as well. Though I did not realize it at the time. Faelan pressed a kiss to her hair. I thought you were an inconvenience, a security breach to be managed. Instead, you were my salvation. So dramatic. I am a 600-year-old vampire king. Drama is part of the job description. Marina laughed, the sound soft and content. I love you, Faelan Sorvain, my dramatic vampire king. And I love you, Marina Sorvain. He used her new name, the one she had taken as part of their bonding. My brave, brilliant wife. wife, partner, ambassador. Marina was all of these things now, roles she never imagined for herself. But they all felt right, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. She drifted off to sleep in Faelan's arms, safe and loved and exactly where she belonged. And when she dreamed, it was of the future they would build together, one night at a time, one small act of courage and compassion at a time. In the library where they first met, the book stood silent witness to their story. A tale of a human woman who dared to challenge a king, and a vampire who learned that power meant nothing without someone to share it with. A love story that defied logic and convention and every reasonable expectation. But the best love stories always do. Years later, when scholars studying vampire-human relations would ask Marina how it all began, how she managed to bridge two worlds and change the course of history, she would smile and give a simple answer. I fell asleep in a library and he chose kindness instead of anger. Everything else followed from that one choice. And in the privacy of their chambers, Faelan would add his own version. She trusted me when she had no reason to. She saw past the monster to the man beneath. And she loved me anyway, with all her fierce human heart. That was the real beginning. That was when I knew my life would never be the same. They built their life together day by night and night by day, navigating the complications with patience and humor and unwavering commitment. Marina continued her work as ambassador, eventually establishing formal diplomatic channels between human governments and vampire territories. Her research on cultural integration became foundational texts in the field. Emily joined the effort, her own experiences driving her to ensure no one else suffered as she had. She became a leading advocate for victims' rights and cross-species justice reform. Faelan ruled with wisdom and strength, his bond with Marina making him more accessible, more willing to consider human perspectives. Together, they reformed laws, modernized institutions, and proved that cooperation between vampires and humans was not just possible, but beneficial for both. And every night when the work was done and the castle quieted, they returned to the library. Their sanctuary. The place where they fell in love over ancient texts and shared purpose, where a human woman once dozed off against a vampire king's arm, and that vampire chose to protect rather than punish, where everything began with a choice, a moment of unexpected tenderness that changed two lives and eventually two worlds. That was their story, their truth, their forever. And it all started because he let her sleep.